Everyone pictures the same U-boat, a gray Type VII hunting convoys in the Atlantic. But here's what the movies don't show. By 1945, Germany was deploying submarines that could outrun destroyers underwater, a technology so advanced it wouldn't be matched for another decade. The question is, why did it take them so long? Germany didn't build one submarine. They built an entire evolution: coastal ambush boats, ocean raiders, underwater supply trucks, minelayers, and finally, the revolutionary Type XXIII that changed submarine warfare forever. Each class was a response to a specific crisis. Each one tells you exactly where Germany was losing the war. This documentary covers every operational U-boat class, from 1939 to 1945. Not the prototypes or paper designs, but the submarines that actually hunted, supplied, and died in the Battle of the Atlantic. From the workhorse Type Vs to the desperate late-war experiments that arrived too late to matter, let's see how Germany's submarine force evolved and why it ultimately failed. Type I. The Type I was Germany's first attempt at a large ocean-going submarine after the First World War. Designed in the early 1932s, it was influenced by export submarines built secretly for foreign navies. Only 2 Type I boats were commissioned, and both suffered from stability and handling problems. They were used operationally early in the war, but were quickly sidelined, demonstrating that Germany's initial large submarine concept required major refinement. Type II. The Type II was a small coastal submarine intended primarily for training and short-range patrols. It entered service before the war and formed the backbone of Germany's early U-boat force. Although limited in range and armament, Type II boats conducted combat patrols in the North Sea and coastal waters. As the war progressed, they were increasingly relegated to training roles, but they played a crucial part in preparing crews for larger U-boats. Type VII. The Type VII was the most important and numerous U-boat class of the Second World War. Introduced before the war and continually refined, it became the standard German attack submarine. Compact, relatively fast to build, and well-suited to Atlantic operations, Type VII boats carried out the majority of Germany's commerce-raiding patrols. Variants, such as the Type VII-C, formed the core of the U-boat arm during the height of the Battle of the Atlantic, shaping Allied anti-submarine warfare in response. Type IX. The Type IX was designed for long-range missions far from European waters. Larger than the Type VII, it carried more fuel, provisions, and torpedoes. These submarines operated in the South Atlantic, Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and off the coast of the United States. While fewer in number, Type IX boats extended the reach of Germany's submarine campaign and forced the Allies to defend shipping lanes across the globe. Type X. The Type X was a large submarine designed primarily for laying naval mines. It could carry a significant mine load while still retaining torpedo capability. Operational use of the Type X focused on disrupting Allied shipping near ports and narrow sea lanes. Though not produced in large numbers, it represented Germany's effort to use submarines for strategic mine laying rather than direct attack alone. Type XB. The Type XB was an improved and enlarged mine-laying submarine, capable of carrying even more mines than earlier designs. It was one of the largest non-supply U-boats built by Germany. These boats laid extensive minefields in Allied waters, posing long-term hazards to shipping. While vulnerable and expensive to build, the Type XB demonstrated the strategic value Germany placed on underwater mine-laying operations. Type 14. The Type 14, commonly known as the Milchkuh, was a dedicated submarine supply vessel. It carried fuel, torpedoes, food, and spare parts to resupply attack U-boats at sea. By enabling extended patrols, Type XIV boats significantly increased the endurance of Germany's submarine force. However, their lack of offensive armament and predictable operating areas made them prime targets, and their loss had a major impact on U-boat operations. Type XV. The Type XV was developed as a transport submarine, intended to carry cargo rather than conduct combat patrols. These boats were based on existing designs and modified for logistical roles. They were used to move critical materials when surface routes became too dangerous. While strategically useful, transport submarines diverted resources from combat boats and faced the same Allied anti-submarine threats. Type XXII. The Type XXII represented a radical shift in submarine design. Built for sustained high-speed underwater operation, it was the first true submarine rather than a surface ship that could submerge. Although many Type XXII boats were completed and commissioned, they entered service too late to influence the war. Their design nevertheless transformed post-war submarine development worldwide. Type XXII. The Type XXII was a smaller coastal version of the advanced Elektroboote concept. Unlike the Type XXII, it saw limited combat use in the final months of the war. Despite its late introduction, the Type XXII achieved some operational success, demonstrating the effectiveness of high underwater speed and modern submarine tactics even under desperate conditions. Type VII D. The Type VII D was a mine-laying variant of the standard Type VII design, created to combine offensive patrols with strategic mine warfare. It entered service in the early years of the war. These submarines laid minefields in busy Allied shipping routes while retaining torpedo capability. Although produced in limited numbers, the Type VII D expanded the tactical flexibility of Germany's most common U-boat class. Type IX D. The Type IX-D was a long-range development of the original Type IX, designed for exceptionally distant patrols. It featured increased fuel capacity and modifications for extended endurance. Type IX-D boats operated in remote theaters, including the Indian Ocean, where German submarines cooperated with Axis partners. Their missions highlighted Germany's attempt to sustain a global submarine presence despite mounting Allied pressure. Type XVII. The Type VII XIII was an advanced submarine class powered by a Walter hydrogen peroxide turbine designed to achieve very high underwater speeds. A small number were completed and commissioned late in the war. Operational use was extremely limited, and technical complexity restricted their impact. Nevertheless, the Type VII demonstrated Germany's push toward revolutionary propulsion systems that influenced post-war submarine research. Type VII C-41. The Type VII C-41 was a strengthened development of the standard Type VII C introduced during the later years of the war. It featured improved structural integrity, allowing for deeper diving depth than earlier variants. These submarines were intended to improve survivability against increasingly effective Allied anti-submarine warfare. While operationally similar to earlier Type VII boats, the Type VII C-41 reflected Germany's attempt to adapt an existing workhorse design to harsher combat conditions. Type IX-C-40. The Type IX C-40 was the final wartime evolution of the long-range Type IX family. It incorporated incremental improvements in endurance, reliability, and onboard systems based on combat experience. Entering service as Allied dominance at sea intensified, these submarines faced severe operational constraints. Nevertheless, they represented the culmination of Germany's conventional long-range U-boat development before the shift toward advanced Elektroboote designs. Type VII-F. The Type VII-F was a specialized torpedo transport variant of the standard Type VII design. Instead of conducting attack patrols, it was built to carry large numbers of torpedoes for resupplying combat U-boats at sea. Only a small number entered service, and their operational use was limited by Allied air and naval dominance. Nevertheless, the Type VII-F illustrates Germany's effort to sustain submarine operations through underwater logistics rather than surface supply. Type XXVII-B5 Seehund. The Type XXVII-B5, known as the Seehund, was a two-man Midget submarine developed late in the war. Unlike earlier German Midget designs, it was seaworthy and capable of operating in open waters. Seehund submarines conducted combat missions against Allied shipping in coastal areas during the final months of the war. Although their strategic impact was limited, they achieved some successes and represented Germany's last operational submarine innovation. Type XXVAI, a Hecht. The Type XXVII, a called Hecht, was an early German Midget submarine design intended for stealth attacks in confined waters. It was powered electrically and carried external explosive charges rather than torpedoes. Operational use of the Hecht was extremely limited, and its performance was poor compared to later designs. Even so, it marked the beginning of Germany's Midget submarine program, which later evolved into more effective late-war craft. Germany's U-boat force in World War II was not defined by a single design, but by a continuous evolution of submarine classes tailored to changing strategic demands. From small coastal boats to global raiders, supply vessels, and experimental underwater craft, each class played a distinct role. Together, these submarines formed an interconnected system of attack, support, logistics, and innovation. As Allied countermeasures improved, German submarine design shifted from quantity toward specialization and technological breakthroughs. The legacy of these U-boat classes extends far beyond the Second World War. Their successes, failures, and innovations reshaped naval warfare and laid the foundation for the modern submarine fleets that followed.